Hey guys, this episode of Pulp Kitchen is brought to you by Caldera Lab. Now, skincare is important, but so is making a good first impression. So how do you put your best face forward with a good skincare routine? Caldera Lab is clinically proven to reduce wrinkles, fine lines, and signs of aging, and they're leading the way in men's skincare.
Skincare can often feel like the Wild West for men, whether men can't find the right brand or simply lack knowledge or understanding of it. But luckily, it's easier than ever with Caldera Lab and the regimen. Guys, inside the regimen is a bundle including the Clean Slate, the Base Layer, and the Good. The Clean Slate starts and ends your day. This face wash leaves all skin types refreshed. The base layer is your daily moisturizer that hydrates your skin and absorbs it fast, leaving you with a matte finish so you can start your day confidently. The Good is a clinically proven, multifunctional serum that helps your skin look tighter and smoother, as well as helps reduce the visibility of wrinkles and fine lines. Caldera Lab is made with top-tier ingredients and is a great addition to your daily routine. It takes less than a minute, morning and night.
So you can use our exclusive code PULP20, that's PULP20, to enjoy 20% off of their best products at calderalab.com. That's calderalab.com. You can find more information in the link in our description below.
Guys, welcome to this bonus episode of Pulp Kitchen. Don't forget we post full episodes of the show every single Wednesday, but every so often we like to do a little extra conversation. We put in some extra reviews. Today, George, is cinema dying? Is the film business dead? Is it on a slow, horrible consolidation spiral towards nothingness?
Good Lord.
We're going to have a little bit of a conversation today.
Okay.
Perry writes into the show, friend of the show.
Friend of the show, Perry.
And says, all right, lads, Perry here. Been watching since episode 1. Top lads. Great pod. Bosh.
That is amazing. Episode 1.
Episode 1.
Someone
episode
stuck around
uno.
with that.
Yeah, what did we talk about episode 1?
Uno. We talked about Seinfeld. We talked about Loki. I think White Lotus season 1.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Did we talk about Bo Burnham's Inside, or was that before, in like when we figure out what the show was?
That was our rehearsal recordings, which people don't know about. Yes,
we do. Yeah,
we did
the unreleased tapes.
We did 4 demo tapes.
Yeah,
4
figuring out
bonus
what this would
episodes.
be.
Yeah.
And then we still spent the next like 20 episodes.
Well, you have to invent on the job, don't you?
Perry says, I'm writing in to talk about the current state of the movie industry. There's lots of chatter going on about how cinema is dying and how there's no new IP being created. Everything is a sequel, prequel, remake/reimagining, etc. I do understand the merit in that second point to an extent, but my thoughts are a bit more positive on the matter. My argument is that we are in a golden age of cinema and have been for a long time. And here's why. Firstly, we have GOAT directors, greatest of all time directors, all still alive and making films. Scorsese, James Cameron, Spielberg, Tarantino, Ridley Scott. I think Werner Herzog also deserves a mention here. Then you have the likes of Nolan, Villeneuve, Fincher, Bong Joon-ho, who are in their prime and will go down as GOAT directors. Then there's another level of established directors where whether you like all the films or not, you know you're getting a certain level of quality and prestige. Usually all of their films are something worth watching. There are so many good directors in this category, to name a few. Danny Boyle, Matt Reeves, Guillermo del Toro, Wes Anderson, Paul Thomas Anderson, Alfonso Cuarón, J.J. Abrams, Alejandro Iñárritu, Edgar Wright, Charlie Kaufman, the Coen brothers, Darren Aronofsky, Rian Johnson, Catherine Bigelow, Steve McQueen, Damon Chazelle, Steven Soderbergh, Taika Waititi, the Russo brothers, Tim Burton, and Spike Lee. I could go on.
Very male heavy there.
Then, I agree. Then you have the likes of Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, Greta Gerwig, Alex Garland, Robert Eggers, the Safdie brothers, Chloe Zhao, and Gareth Edwards. These directors aren't new or up and coming anymore, but they still have so much work ahead of them and could genuinely go on to become truly great directors. I even think that Ben Stiller's directorial work will blossom in the future. There's countless other names I haven't mentioned, but I think we are inundated and spoiled by the talent we have out there, not to mention the increasing quality of TV over the last decade or so. There's more films being made today than there have ever been, and I feel so lucky to be alive to consume it all. What are your thoughts? Before we jump in to answer this question.
Because that's a big question.
A huge question. And I think you and I have sort of dipped into it. We get odd questions about where we think it's going. We've talked a lot about consolidation in cinema and cinema adapting. I think the reason we're talking about this conversation is that there has been talk of, I think, this sort of July, June, May period having been slightly sketchy for cinemas, right? And I just want to read some stats of the recent films that have come out and what their opening weekend takes are. So,
domestic or worldwide?
This will be worldwide. So typically, this isn't true for everyone, but like what we typically deem a film to be regarded as a financial success is if it makes 3 times its production budget.
Three times? I thought it used to be double.
I'm talking about big studio, big films, right?
So it's not enough. So if it makes double, it's done fine. But for it to make triple,
considered success, pays for the next thing,
worth
endorses.
the time doing it.
Yes. We'll get onto this idea later that like, if you make a $200 million movie and it makes $400 million, you've made that much money more, right? Versus like, if I make a $20 million movie and it makes 80, it's 4 times. I still only made like that little bit of money versus like the big film, even though it's not like, that's way more money to be making, right? So for example, Indiana Jones 5 had a budget of $300 million.
What?
Which I saw that and I thought, you what?
Was that visible on screen?
Don't get me wrong, big film effects, like, when you say 300 million, I'm thinking Hobbit, Avengers, Avatar.
Yeah.
I just am like slightly surprised as to like where the money went.
And also a huge, steep climb for a film that hasn't had a film out, a franchise that hasn't had a film out in 15 years.
It's not like Indiana Jones is this like solid gold. This is definitely good money. So would be expected to make $900 million to be considered excess in the first 5 days. When we say opening weekend, films very rarely, big films very rarely actually open on a Friday. They open on a Wednesday, or in the case of Mission Impossible, open on a Monday. So they have like their opening weekend. It made only $80 million. So that is like really,
and obviously remember that the film will typically a film performs best in its first week, and then it diminishes.
And very successful films will have a very low diminishing. They'll sustain their period in cinemas. And it's also worth remembering that films don't get DVD, Blu-ray releases. You can buy them digitally a la carte, but that's there's not anywhere near the market that we used to have for that. The Flash cost $200 million, which I kind of expect. It's like it's still up there, but like big special effects heavy film. So that would need to make $600 million to be excess. That's only on 250 million so far.
Crikey.
So while yes, it has technically covered its production cost, we need to remember that marketing for these films, especially in the level of Flash, goes into the tens of millions.
It needs to be at least double, right? That's
yes, this is why we're saying in that territory is where.
So that, really, it just gave earning $50 million more.
Spread across who? Like you've seen the credits across all those people, all the producers, like pennies on the dollar. Elemental, which I talked about in the full episode, cost $200 million to make, which don't get me wrong, like beautiful film, and I know these visual effects are very well done and the effects are very beautiful, but I go, that's a lot of money to make a sort of 100-minute animation. That's only made $200 million. So that would need to make 6 to be considered a success. I could go on. I hear the story is similar for the latest Transformers film, a franchise I know you and I are not interested in.
Is that out?
Yeah, I think it's out. Exactly. So a franchise you and I not interested in, but I think typically would be a $200 million film.
Yeah.
I think they usually make money, especially in international markets. Spider-Verse 2, on the other hand, right, cost $100 million to make and is currently on a $650 million taking. So that we would say is a success. And I think you and I have had this conversation of like Guardians had done well, but Ant-Man less so, Doctor Strange less so, and we're just clearly pointing at the ones that go, well, hey, that one is good. Yeah. And that's a film that isn't. And I think the films I mentioned before, Indiana Jones 5, Elemental, Flash, even though we're probably the only people on the internet that like The Flash, most of the people have not enjoyed those films.
Yes. The reaction people have had to those films has been clearly how people felt about them before going in, which is kind of like, yeah. And that
why?
Lukewarm.
And I think this brings up the conversation of in the last if you look at the top 20 highest grossing films of all time, I think 16 or 17 of them have come out in the last 10 years.
Right.
I think 11 years makes it 17. So if we're to look at a pure financial metric, you could say, is cinema dying? Well, clearly not. Look how many billions, how healthy we've replaced every top highest grossing film in the last 10 years. Surely financially, the film industry is as healthy as it ever been. But then you ask lots of people who aren't that connected to film, they would say, I don't see any of the films I like anymore. It seems to be only superhero films, toy films, big studio films that mainly appeal to 14-year-old boys. I'm being very, very cynical, right? But then you could look at that and go, there are many films that have come out this year that have cost $20 million to make, which are making 3, 4, 5 times their budget. So films that are making 80, 90, 100. Why then are the studios not rushing to go, hang on, cancel the $200 million films, let's make a load of interesting, smaller scale, ideas-based $20 million
Because
films.
10 small movies is 10 times the risk of one big one.
There's only so many calendars in the year. There's only so many production teams. There's only so many scripts you want to improve. I mean, look, these are answers we all know. But yeah, this is a conversation we've had, and feel free to jump in, about consolidation in the film industry. I talked all about Tom Cruise and how he sort of created his own brand of big budget cinema. I don't feel like the likes of Christopher Nolan. I'm not going to worry about Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve. Those guys are clearly were doing it before everyone else was doing it. It's this idea of, why would I... Let's say, for example, you thought Guardians 3 was okay. I know you really liked. Let's imagine we came out on our podcast and we say Guardians 3 is okay. Why would I pay up to £20 to see a film that's kind of okay when I will probably get it for free, in inverted commas, or included in my streaming service in 3 months?
Yeah, it's a very good point.
That's what I think the problem is. I think a film has to be really, really good. And I think they've lost this sense of urgency over why you should see a film in cinemas. And I think what the rest of the industry has gone, oh, but you see, we shot it on IMAX. And actually, if you don't see it in this way, you're actually not going to see it in the proper way at all. And I think that's where the industry's kind of going.
I think people, I don't know if there's any data about this, but I just think people are increasingly distracted and busy, in inverted commas, as well. And there is so much more content out there now. Not just like on TikTok and stuff, but I mean, like, there's so much. We talked about the amount of TV, and yes, Perry's email says like there's a load more films than ever being made. Yes, but that means that it is hard that even we who love films, sometimes if I miss a film, I'll go, well, at least I know I can catch it. I don't have to run across town like you had to in the 70s to try and find
Even for our podcast, like if I miss a film, like I've missed Spider-Verse 2 because I was away. It's not the worst thing in the world if I catch that in 8 weeks' time.
The worst thing you have to fight is spoilers.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of that, we talked about that in purely financial terms.
Yes. And a lot of Perry's point was about the talent that currently circulating
I think
in the pool,
that,
which we'll get
broadly
onto.
speaking, the counter-argument to Perry's, which I agree, but Perry, you're absolutely right. When you list it out of that, although very Anglo-centric in your summary, not incorrect at all, very good talent there, but we mustn't forget the wider world and the talent that's there.
Yeah.
But that's valid. The counter-argument to that is that, yes, all those films are being made, but they are the tip of an increasingly shrinking iceberg. And you're having a whole world of films below the sea level, below the line, that aren't getting made as much anymore. So instead of it being 1 in every 5 films, it's now 1 in every 10 films. And there are certain things, I think there are, broadly speaking, less and less avenues and access for filmmakers to get their things made now. So to get more talent coming up and being invested in. Now,
Todd Phillips famously said, I had an idea for a script and I was like, hang on, why don't I just make it a comic book movie? And then you had the Joker.
It's really, that's really interesting. He tells this anecdote about being outside a press screening, test screening for War Dogs.
Yeah.
And he wanted to make a movie like he did about set in the 70s and Scorsese and stuff.
The King of
And he
Comedy.
saw a big billboard for, I think, Age of Ultron or Captain America Civil War, and he was like, but that's what being advertised. Why don't I just
Joker went to make like critical success, commercial success.
Yes, right. So I think I don't have the data or the evidence to say, but I think the general counter argument is like, yes, all that stuff is being made, but that's by established things. And yes, filmmakers are coming through, but it's much harder to get seen and get noticed unless you're doing it for like an absolute shoestring, like indie budget of like under $1 million.
There's that chance you're the guy that makes that film for $5 million that goes viral and it becomes like a paranormal activity.
Less than 500,000. You can make something for like $500,000, does really well, becomes a runaway hit. You can then get picked to direct the next Marvel.
In a lot of ways, the barriers to entry to make something and to get something seen have gone away.
Yeah.
Like, you can if you want.
Absolutely. That's the other count. Then there's the reverse argument. And people like Scorsese have said this. The access to technology is unbelievable.
Remember I talked about that film that's coming out called The Creator with John David Washington that's shot on a Sony FX3, which is like, it's like that camera, but slightly different. It's like, I know we've had loads of team and lighting and nice lenses, but it's like you could technically not have to ask permission from a studio to make something creative. Like, does that now force the rest of the industry to double down on the cost and go, actually, we only make the biggest movies? Here's to justify why we're in cinema.
I think when I think about cinema now, God, if we're going to get really deep about it, it's not whether cinema is dying. It's almost when I'm at my most cynical and my most like negative opinion about film, it's like, I feel like cinema is almost being forgotten a little bit. And I feel like the general culture's perception of what cinema is has become very blurry. And, you know, when we talk about films in the past, it's a lot clearer. Like you can even talk when you talk about films like the 90s. Oh yeah, they were released. You know the poster.
Yeah.
You know the year date. It was released. It grossed this much. That was done. And yeah, they did tie-in merchandising and all that stuff. You know, but now, so for example, on the tube here, I was thinking about like The Bodyguard with Kevin Costner. I'm like that's a movie. We all know the poster. I've never seen it, but like I know that's a movie that came out, right? But then like The Pale Blue Eye that came out at the beginning of this year with Christian Bale and Scott Cooper, another interesting. Exactly, that just came and went,
and it was okay. I actually thought it was.
But
quite
like,
interesting.
where does that? I don't hold.
Where does it
They're
fit?
both films, but I do not hold them as part of the same chronology, almost the same lineage.
2005, a Christian Bale-led murder cold thriller would have been like right to the top.
But it's almost like these films are getting lost in like film history because that didn't come out in a cinema. I almost don't look at it as like a proper film. And I think that's what I mean about culturally. We're getting this sort of blurred vision about what an actual film means, and it's almost like I don't think it's like it's like apathy. It's just this sort of general shrug. Unless you're like people like us who really care about it, I think broadly people are kind of shifting away from it, and what that has resulted in is people just going, "Yeah, I'll watch it at home."
Like for me, my most like quote unquote depressed I get about the industry is like when I see, and again, I'm totally ready to be proved wrong by this because I haven't seen these films. When I see the trailer for Blue Beetle, when I went to see Mission Impossible, and when I was with Talia and we saw the trailer for the new trailer for the Marvels, when we went to go see Elemental. Talia thought we were watching like an O2 ad. Like a sort of like a Marvel tie-in. You know when that happens, like big studio ties into like a network provider, because she couldn't believe of how weird and informal and just like throwaway and disposable. She was like, "Is that a Marvel thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, that is. I think it's the Marvels. Like, it's called the Marvels." And I was like, "Yeah, it's the thing." And she's like, "That looks really, really bad." And even someone who's not interested in it is going, "That looks ropey." That's when I'm like, God.
Yeah.
Also, it just feels so disposable.
I've had this thought about superhero films. I mean, but ever since Batman versus Superman, I've looked at sometimes the posters of films and the Marvels you can include and Ant-Man, Quantumania and all that stuff. And I'm like, that looks like
a cereal box.
No, but it looks like what people who don't know anything about cinema, who don't go to the cinema, it looks like if I was someone who didn't go to the cinema, I would look at a poster like that and go, yeah, that's why I don't go. Yeah. Even though they know nothing about it. It's a stereotype, almost it's a cliche of what cinema shouldn't be. And it's actually kind of become, like Back to the Future 2 when it goes into Jaws 19.
Yeah.
And now we've got Indiana Jones 5. That's what I meant, sorry about
yes,
it's a punchline. And that's where we're at now. So
I used to have this interesting comparison where like I sometimes found it quite frustrating when people would make very reductive comments about games and gaming. And I think because they would see, the only things they would ever see was at the Super Bowl, they would advertise FIFA, Call of Duty and Fortnite. And so the only exposure to that was those things, which is like the equivalent of your Marvels and your Transformers. There's nothing wrong with them, but there are so many amazing stories being told that you just don't know about because it's not really marketed to you. Now I actually feel I'm making the same arguments for film. People are going, what should I even see at the moment? It feels like it's just for 14-year-old boys that's Marvel. And I'm going, no, there's like still really cool stuff coming out. Like a few months ago I saw this, but the accessibility is there. And again, I think it's the time thing. If we also actually don't need to watch a film to find out if it's good anymore. You used to be quite happy to go and see something and be like, I guess it was okay, and that was your activity. Now I think people are so quick to listen to podcasts on it, read reviews, or Google a percentage on a Rotten Tomatoes site and go, well, if it's not right near the top, why would I spend my time and my money when I have all the content at home? Yeah, and I think what I will say is that it's very easy when we talk about the top of the industry and the big money makers, you get this kind of feeling of discontent. I will say that last year when we got press access to the London Film Festival, and we looked at the schedule, and not just the big headliners that began every day. Yeah. You looked at the schedule for every day. You start to kind of like shake with excitement because it's just filled with films that you've never heard of, from directors you've never heard of, featuring talent you've never heard of, that have managed to transcend the hurdles of how it's so hard to make a film. It always has been. But like, it is so hard to make a film. And that's why film festivals are brilliant. You look at all the talent assembled, and that gets you excited. And that reminds you that there is hope. It's just that you have to look for it. And it is right there. I also had a point which I've now forgotten. Oh, sorry. On Perry Bishop's last, like, he sort of categorized the directors in sort of a loose way. And in the last the last group he mentioned, he said Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, Greta Gerwig, Alex Garland, Robert Eggers, the Safdie brothers, Chloe Zhao, and Gareth Edwards. And I think he's kind of right. And it's like these directors aren't necessarily new, but they've got a really promising, hopefully promising body of work ahead. And I look at like Nope from Jordan Peele and how big of a film that was. And like the quality, I think like what we thought about it was slightly mixed, but there are so many parts about it we could enjoy.
Yeah.
But you look at the level of studio backing and the marketing spend on it and the kind of presence it had in the conversation film at that time. And I think that is actually quite substantial that we got a film of that vein to be put on a platform that big.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
I was actually
and a film like Beau is Afraid from Ari Aster coming out and being critically praised for what it is, and just being as absolutely batshit crazy that it was, having a place in cinema is also quite comforting.
I was actually, sorry, not to go back to you were ending on quite a hopeful note there, but going back
please.
to what I was saying about, yes, when I go to a film festival, again, on the flip side, yes, you go to a film festival and yes, you see these films and yes, you get very excited, but then like outside of those niche environments, unless you go really hunting for it, unless it's lucky enough to be picked up by Mubi or Everyman or Picture House Entertainment, you don't see them. And like take a film like Reality, which you both really liked.
Yeah.
And that got like a wafer thin release. And you know,
with a very like Hot Right Now star.
And yes, a Hot Right Now star, and we saw I did see a couple of posters on the underground, but like that film now, where is that film now?
Yeah.
Like,
in the discussion.
Hopefully with a bit of luck it'll pick up on a streamer soon, but
outside of our conversation and people listening.
But that's it. You have to really, really be paying close attention to know that these films are coming through. And like a random example is like BJ Novak made that film Vengeance last year, and I saw a poster for it, but came and went, and I'm struggling to find it unless I rent it. And it's just like you have brilliant films and films that are well reviewed, but they're just not getting the attention, they're not getting noticed, and they're just sort of falling into this dust pile. And
the cycle of information is too quick as well. We're so quick to move on to the next thing, scroll to the next thing.
You might get picked up by a streamer, but then you might sit on the back of a carousel for ages. Yeah. And so...
we've also got this factor of, which has come up a lot of times, of like, this is like one of those old films they used to make that's coming out now, like with No Hard Feelings. And like, I didn't love it. A lot of people actually came back and said they really enjoyed it for what it was. But we're having this phenomenon where it's like, the comedies. Like is Seth Rogen going to do another stoner comedy? Is he almost like not graduated from that as a personality, but is he no longer sort of realizing he can get those films to be made? Because I remember when I saw that...
Well, he's just made a TV series for Apple TV+.
Yes, he has, But I remember when I saw The End of the World, and I thought it was like a real escalation of his style of comedy.
Yeah. This is
like
the end,
this is the end, It was like his escalation of stoner-style comedy, but like with a big budget, with a big studio, with loads of actors. Yeah. And I was like, it feels like you've lost that sense of...
plucky startiness, outsiderness,
almost like indie tweeness to your comedy. I'm not criticizing Seth Rogen. I'm like wondering where when Seth Rogen goes, I've got to do something new. What does he think about doing?
Yeah.
Does the fact that it's a Seth Rogen film get it made automatically? Like Scorsese can make anything he wants, I'm sure.
Well, he's been able, Seth Rogen's diversified and become like a really perfect producer, isn't he?
Yes.
But I don't know, man. I don't know, but I think basically my takeaway is that like there is hope. There are always challenges to films. It's always hard to get films.
We're still seeing great films.
We are still seeing great films. And just pay close attention. And actually, I suppose what I would say to anyone who's having doubt, if obviously it's easy for someone who's a casual film viewer to say, "Oh, cinema is dying," but I would just say to them, not if you actually look for it. If you actually go searching for it and you're prepared to watch something that's outside of your narrow comfort zone that has been provided by you, provided by the admittedly lack of selection we've seen in the past 10 years.
Try to jump away from the pre-roll YouTube ad trailers. Nothing wrong with them, but those are like those kind of films. You probably, if you're asking yourself this question, you're probably not that excited by Transformers: Rise of the Beasts.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's nothing wrong with it, but
and it's hard because you also want to be someone who says every film has its place. I'm just thinking maybe also because we've inundated with so much content that we've not been able to hear the different types of content that's been falling away, like the 90-minute romantic comedy.
I worry about, like, we'd sit down and talk about films for 2 hours every week, and I worry about stuff passing me by.
Yes.
And that's also, like, I'm actively as engaged in the film industry as I probably could be.
Yeah.
The fact that I have another job. And I sort of worry, oh my God, am I seeing everything?
So I would say cinema is not dying. It's not dying. It's there.
Adapting.
You've just got to work hard to find it, like all things. Otherwise, because in a way you are playing an active role as part of a culture to justify its existence. If you don't go to an art gallery and pay admission or pay a donation, why should they stay? They eventually close. It's the same thing. You're voting. So, so if you really are passionate about cinema and don't want to just sit and complain about it, lean in, go find good stuff.
And I think the good thing about that is that if you are passionate about seeing films in the best way possible, the industry is trying to make films in the biggest way possible. So we're seeing Oppenheimer. We're talking about it in 2 weeks. And I'm really glad that Oppenheimer is existing.
Yeah.
And he's able to tell a period drama about science
at scale,
and it's being like marketed like any comic book film is. And like I said this in my review of Mission Impossible, like if the dumb action spy films are dumb but like as good as that, and I really had such a good time with it. I've no problem with more films trying to do that if they can execute it that well, because like we're lucky to get those films that are that big, that are that good, because big is fun. There's nothing wrong with big.
Big can be fun,
but I don't want every film to be Top Gun Maverick.
No, of course.
Well, there you go, guys. I don't
know what we solved.
I don't know if we answered that question, and it's a question that I just felt like we were getting asked a lot based on sort of the tricky June and May, July period we were having. A lot of people were like, cinema is dead, it's over. And I sort of wanted to have a conversation and say, it's changing, some parts of it are dead, but also, I think there is hope.
Yeah, and it's like there is hope because in a way, like with Indiana Jones 5, like there's been a meh response because people felt meh going into it and they made a meh film. They probably should have made a different film. Ant-Man Quantumania didn't do very well because it's not a very good film.
Yeah. We talked about Guardians 3 was well received and sustained, making money throughout the weeks that it was out. It should just be like, yes, make big films, but make sure they're good.
Yes,
like,
don't forget.
Really make sure
we forgot the good sauce.
And it was that. Sorry, just before we wrap up, like Matt Damon, which we covered, made that whole spiel about how you can't make Good Will Hunting anymore because Good Will Hunting didn't need to make money in cinema. It had the DVD release and all of those subsequent things, and for years it would like catch on and make money.
And also, that's how Shawshank became the film that it is.
Oh yeah,
Shawshank absolutely bombed them when it first came out, but actually it was through word of mouth, through rentals and blockbuster culture.
Whereas now that doesn't exist. You cannot afford to not make money immediately.
How many Shawshanks are we sitting on?
Yeah.
At the back of your carousel.
Terrifying. How many bottom drawer scripts are just waiting? And on that note, guys, we will do our best to cover all the best films we can and try and see them and hopefully shine a light on things that are good. Don't forget, we post full episodes of Pulp Kitchen every single Wednesday.
Absolutely. And you know the drill, guys. Post on and follow us on socials, on Instagram and TikTok. Like and subscribe and give us all your support. We really appreciate it.
And if for some reason this is the first thing you've listened of us, we're actually more fun and more optimistic.
Much more witty.
There's film games and impressions and we talk about
head over to the main
films.
episode. You'll see what we're talking about.
Go and check that out, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.